Good night guys, tonight we're doing something different. You're going to slip into a corset that's 2 sizes too small, paint your lips with crushed beetles, and step into the swinging doors of a frontier saloon where the whiskey is questionable and the men are even worse. This is what it was really like to be a saloon girl in the Wild West. And spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Seriously, no pressure. And hey, what city are you watching from? What time is it right now for you? Let me know in the comments. I always read them. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You arrive in a place that isn't even on most maps yet. Dusty stagecoach wheels have just creaked to a halt behind you, and your boots crunch into sun-baked gravel as you step down, blinking into the hot light of a brand new frontier town. Your name's not really your name anymore. Whatever it was in St. Louis or Chicago or wherever you caught your first heartbreak, it's gone. The man who recruited you for this job said to go by something fancier, something French-sounding. Maybe Celeste or Lola. Nobody here will ask for your real one. The town smells like horses, manure, and desperation. There's sawdust scattered across the floors of the wide plank sidewalks to soak up spit, blood, and beer. You spot the saloon immediately. There's always one, usually more. This one's called the Red Feather, and it looks halfway decent. 2 stories tall with the upstairs windows flung open in the heat and faded velvet curtains flapping in the breeze. Piano music stumbles out the door in messy, cheerful bursts. You take a deep breath, straighten your spine, and push through the batwing doors. That's the moment your old life ends. Inside, it's darker and cooler. Your eyes adjust slowly to smoke curling from cigars and cheap lanterns swinging slightly from overhead beams. The bar is long and scratched, polished more by elbows than effort. A tall, bald bartender wipes a glass and doesn't look up. A card game's happening in the corner. No one's winning. Then you see her, the woman in charge. She's leaning against the banister at the top of the stairs. One hip cocked, a feather stuck in her hair like she's daring you to laugh at it. That's the madam. She sizes you up with a single blink. Well, she draws. You're prettier than I expected. Let's see if you can dance. What they don't tell you is that being a saloon girl isn't all clinking glasses and corset giggles. You're not a prostitute. Not officially. You might be if the money's good and you're desperate or ambitious or just too tired to say no. But that's not in your job title. Your job is to get men drinking. That's it. You make them feel like they're interesting, like they're the first man to tip his hat to you that day. And when their coin purse gets light, you move on to the next one. You're selling a performance and your costume is tight satin and a smile. And the audition, oh, it's real. The madam makes you sing, sway your hips, maybe even do a cartwheel if you claim you're acrobatic. If you pass, if you're young enough, thin enough, pretty enough, or interesting enough, you're handed your first pair of work shoes. Heat boots, hard leather, already worn by another sill who either ran off or got buried on Boot Hill. You wonder which your room is upstairs third on the left. It has a bed, a chipped basin, a cracked mirror, and not much else. It'll do. You unpack your satchel, which holds almost nothing. A comb, a photograph you keep face down, 2 pairs of stockings, and a diary you'll never have the energy to write in again. Downstairs, a bell rings twice. That means they want girls on the floor. You lace your corset with trembling fingers already learning to ration your breaths. Your lips go red. Your cheeks get pinched pink and you wrap yourself in a borrowed feather boa that smells like the sweat of 10 other women. Showtime. There's an unspoken order to the madness. The best girls, the top earners, get the choicest tables, closest to the card games or the piano. You, fresh as you are, get the bar. It's the worst place. You're on your feet all night dodging spills and dealing with the men too drunk to sit down or too broke to buy more than one watered-down beer. One man asks your name, slurs it back at you, then tells you his wife just died. You listen, nod, put a hand on his wrist, and gently coax him into another round. He tips you a silver coin. You smile like it means something. Every night ends the same. You climb the stairs just before dawn, your legs aching, hair stuck to your neck, and your ears still ringing with laughter and piano notes. If you're lucky, you made enough tips to keep your spot. If not, the madam might knock on your door in the morning with an envelope and a warning. Pick up the pace or someone else will. There's always another girl stepping off the next coach. There's always a prettier smile waiting to outshine yours. One historical fact: not all saloon girls were prostitutes. Despite the myth, many were dancers, singers, and conversationalists hired solely to keep men drinking and spending. One quirky fact: some saloon girls wore bells sewn into their petticoats to announce their arrival. Subtle self-promotion with every step. One debate. Historians still argue whether saloon life was exploitative but empowering or somewhere messily in between. Did the job offer independence or did it trap women in a different kind of cage? You fall asleep that first night to the creaking of floorboards and the low hum of piano notes still drifting up from below. This is your new world now. You're a saloon girl. Welcome to the show. The first thing you feel the next morning is the ache. It lives in your back. The soles of your feet and somewhere deep in your ribs where the corset squeezed a little too hard for a little too long. You groan and roll onto your side in the lumpy mattress, blinking up at the ceiling, which has water stains that look suspiciously like dancing devils. Someone's arguing in the hallway already, probably Frenchie and Daisy again. Two of the girls who've been here longer than you. They bicker like sisters, but neither one trusts the other within 5 of a good typic. You sit up, stretch, and immediately regret it. Time to get dressed. The reality of your wardrobe sets in fast. You thought it would be all glamour. Ruffled skirts, velvet corsets, satiny gloves, and yes, those are in the pile, but they're stiff with sweat and overuse. The lace itches. The bond in the corset has poked through in places, threatening to stab you if you breathe wrong. The boots are too tight because they belong to someone with smaller feet. Probably that girl, Kitty, who vanished 2 weeks ago and left half her things behind. The heels chipped. You'll wobble like a newborn colt, but it's all you've got. Dressing takes forever. First, the chemise, a thin cotton slip you wear under everything else to soak up sweat and maybe protect your skin from the outer garments. Then the corset, which you lace up yourself, unless you can bribe another girl to do it. Pull too tight and you'll faint by noon. Too loose and you'll get yelled at for looking slouchy. You learn to strike a balance. You hook it up at the front, then twist your arms behind you like some kind of desperate bird, pulling the laces tighter, inch by inch. There's no breathing normally anymore. Just short, shallow gasps, and a posture so straight it could give a nun a run for her money. Skirts next, layers of them, petticoats for fluff, then the actual dress, which is heavier than you'd think. It's not the dainty, frilly number people imagine. It's built to withstand long nights, spilled beer, and wandering hands. Sometimes it's black velvet, but other times gaudy red satin with too much trim. Every dress smells like old perfume and anxiety. Stockings are wool if it's winter, silk if you're lucky, and they roll down at the worst times. Garter belts pinch. Under it all, your body is quietly staging a rebellion. Calluses bloom on your feet. Bruises appear in strange places. Your waistline shrinks because you can't finish meals anymore. Your stomach's too compressed to hold much. You don't complain. No one does. Then comes hair and face. Your makeup box is tiny but lethal. You mix chalk powder with a little water and smear it across your cheeks to pale your complexion. Rouge goes on your lips and the apples of your cheeks. Beet juice if you're broke or imported French powder if you can get it from the madam. Some girls use arsenic to brighten their eyes. You avoid that. You're not that desperate. Not yet. Your eyebrows get darkened with charcoal. Your lashes curled with a hot spoon. The hair curls, always curls. You heat a poker in the fire and wrap your hair around it one lock at a time. You'll burn yourself at least once a week. And then there's the corset again. Already you feel it pressing against your spine like an impatient finger. If it's the wrong kind, too short or too long, you'll get blisters at your hips or raw spots near your shoulder blades. The bond inside is usually whalebone or steel. Some girls faint during dance sets. A few just disappear into the alley and puke quietly between customers, then come back in smiling. You once heard of a girl who passed out mid-dance, toppled over like a cut tree, and cracked 2 ribs. She was back the next week. Why? Because the job pays better than sewing or washing. And nobody's husband is going to give a job like this to his wife. Saloon girls make their own money, and they wear their bruises like armor. One of the other girls, Ruby, saunters into your room mid-makeup. She leans against your door frame with a cigarette in her hand and a knowing smirk on her face. Lace tighter, sweetheart, she says, nodding at your corset. You don't want the madam thinking you're going soft. You laugh, but she's not wrong. The tighter you look, the more coins you get. Men like tiny waists. Makes them feel bigger, more powerful. They don't think about the internal organs you've just relocated to achieve that shape. They think about how delicate you look, how fragile, easy to own, easiness to break. But you know better. Saloon girls aren't delicate. You learn fast how to walk in heels over broken floorboards. How to smile with chapped lips. How to laugh at jokes that make your stomach turn. You learn to patch your stockings with thread stolen from the madam's drawer. And to hide hair pins in your corset just in case. One historical fact. Saloon girls often wore corsets that reshaped their ribs and compressed their stomachs so tightly that long-term organ damage wasn't uncommon. One quirky fact, some women stuffed their corsets with horsehair or cotton to pad out the hips or bust. Victorian body contouring, basically. One debate, historians still argue whether corsets were tools of oppression or expressions of feminine power. Discipline over the body versus torture by fashion. Once you're dressed, powdered, and prepped, you take one last look in the cracked mirror. You don't look like yourself anymore. You look like the role you're playing, a walking, breathing dream of silk and fire. That's good. That's the goal. Downstairs, the piano's son and the piano starts again. The bell rings once. Why, you're expected on the floor in 10 minutes. Time to smile. You don't expect there to be an actual interview, but here you are sitting on a velvet upholstered chair that's seen better decades. Across from the madam, who's lighting a cigar with one hand and sorting bills with the other, she barely looks at you. A large oil painting of a woman with wild hair and a pistol hangs crooked behind her. Maybe it's a self-portrait. Maybe it's a warning. So, she says, blowing smoke in a lazy spiral. Can you keep men interested without taking your bloomers off? That's the first question. There's no mention of references or prior experience. No one asks about your education, though. God help you if you sound too educated. You say you can hold a conversation. You know a few jokes. And you've danced in a boarding house parlor once or twice. The madam snorts. Sweetheart, if you can pretend to love a man while looking straight through him, you'll do just fine. That's the real job description. You're not here to fall in love. You're here to act like every lonely, busted-up cowpoke in town is the most interesting man you've ever met. You're here to sell a fantasy. It's not always sexual. Is often sadder than that. You're selling hope, attention, the illusion of importance. Sometimes you're the only person who's looked these men in the eye in weeks. The audition is informal but unavoidable. The madam calls for the piano man named Silas, grumpy as a cactus and twice as prickly, and tells him to play something that don't make me want to die. He plunks out a tune somewhere between ragtime and tavern dirge, and you stand up and try to remember how your limbs are supposed to move. You do a few turns, flash a smile, shake your skirts like you mean it. The madam watches without expression, then interrupts. Laugh like you're drunk and flirting. You do. Then she says, now do it like you hate yourself a little. That's when she nods, finally satisfied. She waves her cigar like a scepter. You'll start tonight. You last a week. I'll give you a proper bed instead of that cot in the corner. Any man gives you trouble. You come straight to me or Billy behind the bar. Don't take anything that doesn't jingle. Don't drink unless it's watered down. And don't ever let a miner walk you home alone. You nod, trying to absorb all of it. Your throat is dry. You're not sure if it's nerves or just the heat. Then comes the paperwork, if you can call it that. No contract, just your name, a few vague rules scrolled on the back of a liquor invoice, and a warning that a lady's reputation is her only real currency. Irony hits you a second later. You're not exactly a lady anymore, are you? You're shown to a narrow room just off the kitchen to store your things. It's barely bigger than a closet with a dented wash basin and a cot with a yellowed pillow. You won't sleep there long if you earn enough to upgrade to an upstairs room. That's the goal. The upstairs girls get windows, doors that lock, and the occasional customer who leaves flowers instead of bruises. The kitchen girls ignore you at first, heads down over dirty pots and endless potatoes. One gives you a sidelong glance and mutters, she'll be gone by Tuesday. It's Monday. That night, you're handed a tray of drinks and told to flirt with the men at table 3. No one explains what flirt means in this context. You figure it out fast. A hand on a shoulder here. A laugh that's a little too loud there. You remember that phrase, pretend to love a man while looking straight through him. It works. Table 3 is 3 prospectors and a ranch hand who smells like cowhide and kerosene. You pour drinks, let one of them call you darling, and steer the conversation just enough to keep the whiskey flowing. Every so often, the madam sweeps by like a velvet hawk, watching to see who's working and who's slouching. If you stand still too long, she snaps her fingers. Motion equals money. Smiling equals money. You're an actress on a sticky floor stage, and your paycheck depends on how well you perform. You're not allowed to sit unless you're invited, and even then, it's risky. Some men think a girl who sits wants something more. Others just want company while they lose at cards. It's a tightrope walk. Too cold, you make no tips. Too warm, you risk a shove into the alley. Midway through your shift, a miner tries to grab your hip, and you slap his hand away. He stumbles up red-faced, shouting something about uppity city girls. The bartender, Billy, appears behind you so fast, it's like he teleported. He hauls the miner out by the collar and throws him into the street. Everyone claps. You're shaking anyway. Later in the back room, the madam offers you a drink and a nod of approval. Not bad for your first night, she says. You'll toughen up. You already feel it happening. Your nerves fray a little. Your spine straightens. You learn not to flinch when someone hollers, not to cry when someone sneers. You survive. That's your job. Now, one historical fact, many saloon girls were hired through vague advertisements in newspapers or word-of-mouth recruiters who offered entertainment work in western towns, often leaving out the rougher details. One quirky fact, some saloons required girls to pass a mock flirtation test before being hired, essentially a live demonstration of how charming and marketable they were under pressure. One debate. Some historians believe madams acted as protectors for their girls, while others argue they were just another layer of exploitation in a system built to drain every ounce of charm and coin out of desperate young women. You return to your cot that night with sore cheeks from smiling and aching feet from constant motion. The pillow smells like dust. You close your eyes and dream of quieter places. But even in sleep, you can hear the piano still playing. You don't expect there to be an actual interview, but here you are sitting on a velvet-upholstered chair that's seen better decades across from the madam who's lighting a cigar with one hand and sorting bills with the other. She barely looks at you. A large oil painting of a woman with a wild hair and a pistol hangs crooked behind her. Maybe it's a self-portrait. Maybe it's a warning. "So," she says, blowing smoke in a lazy spiral. "Can you keep men interested without taking your bloomers off?" That's the first question. There's no mention of references or prior experience. No one asks about your education, though. God help you if you sound too educated. You say you can hold a conversation. You know a few jokes and you've danced in a boarding house parlor once or twice. The madam snorts. "Sweetheart, if you can pretend to love a man while looking straight through him, you'll do just fine. That's the real job description. You're not here to fall in love. You're here to act like every lonely, busted-up cowpoke in town is the most interesting man you've ever met. You're here to sell a fantasy. It's not always sexual. It's often sadder than that. You're selling hope, attention, the illusion of importance. Sometimes you're the only person who's looked these men in the eye in weeks. The audition is informal but unavoidable. The madam calls for the piano man named Silas, grumpy as a cactus and twice as prickly, and tells him to play something that don't make me want to die. He plunks out a tune somewhere between ragtime and tavern dirge, and you stand up and try to remember how your limbs are supposed to move. You do a few turns, flash a smile, shake your skirts like you mean it. The madam watches without expression, then interrupts. Laugh like you're drunk and flirting. You do. Then she says, "Now do it like you hate yourself a little." That's when she nods, finally satisfied. She waves her cigar like a scepter. "You'll start tonight. You'll last a week. I'll give you a proper bed instead of that cot in the corner. Any man gives you trouble, you come straight to me or Billy behind the bar. Don't take anything that doesn't jingle. Don't drink unless it's watered down. And don't ever let a minor walk you home alone." You nod, trying to absorb all of it. Your throat is dry. You're not sure if it's nerves or just the heat. Then comes the paperwork, if you can call it that. No contract, just your name, a few vague rules scrolled on the back of a liquor invoice, and a warning that a lady's reputation is her only real currency. Irony hits you a second later. You're not exactly a lady anymore, are you? You're shown to a narrow room just off the kitchen to store your things. It's barely bigger than a closet with a dented wash basin and a cot with a yellowed pillow. You won't sleep there long if you earn enough to upgrade to an upstairs room. That's the goal. The upstairs girls get windows, doors that lock, and the occasional customer who leaves flowers instead of bruises. The kitchen girls ignore you at first, heads down over dirty pots and endless potatoes. One gives you a sidelong glance and mutters, "She'll be gone by Tuesday." It's Monday. That night, you're handed a tray of drinks and told to flirt with the men at table 3. No one explains what flirt means in this context. You figure it out fast. A hand on a shoulder here. A laugh that's a little too loud there. You remember that phrase, pretend to love a man while looking straight through him. It works. Table 3 is 3 prospectors and a ranch hand who smells like cowhide and kerosene. You pour drinks, let one of them call you darling, and steer the conversation just enough to keep the whiskey flowing. Every so often, the madam sweeps by like a velvet hawk, watching to see who's working and who's slouching. If you stand still too long, she snaps her fingers. Motion equals money. Smiling equals money. You're an actress on a sticky floor stage, and your paycheck depends on how well you perform. You're not allowed to sit unless you're invited. And even then, it's risky. Some men think a girl who sits wants something more. Others just want company while they lose at cards. It's a tightrope walk. Too cold. You make no tips. Too warm. You risk a shove into the alley. Midway through your shift, a miner tries to grab your hip, and you slap his hand away. He stumbles up red-faced, shouting something about uppy city girls. The bartender, Billy, appears behind you so fast, it's like he teleported. He hauls the miner out by the collar and throws him into the street. Everyone claps. You're shaking. Anyway, later in the back room, the madam offers you a drink and a nod of approval. Not bad for your first night, she says. You'll toughen up. You already feel it happening. Your nerves fray a little. Your spine straightens. You learn not to flinch when someone hollers, not to cry when someone sneers. You survive. That's your job. Now, one historical fact, many saloon girls were hired through vague advertisements in newspapers or word-of-mouth recruiters who offered entertainment work in western towns, often leaving out the rougher details. One quirky fact, some saloons required girls to pass a mock flirtation test before being hired, essentially a live demonstration of how charming and marketable they were under pressure. One debate. Some historians believe madams acted as protectors for their girls, while others argue they were just another layer of exploitation in a system built to drain every ounce of charm and coin out of desperate young women. You return to your cot that night with sore cheeks from smiling and aching feet from constant motion. The pillow smells like dust. You close your eyes and dream of quieter places. But even in sleep, you can hear the piano still playing. You don't expect there to be an actual interview, but here you are sitting on a velvet-upholstered chair that's seen better decades across from the madam who's lighting a cigar with one hand and sorting bills with the other. She barely looks at you. A large oil painting of a woman with a wild hair and a pistol hangs crooked behind her. Maybe it's a self-portrait. Maybe it's a warning. So, she says, blowing smoke in a lazy spiral. Can you keep men interested without taking your bloomers off? That's the first question. There's no mention of references or prior experience. No one asks about your education, though. God help you if you sound too educated. You say you can hold a conversation. You know a few jokes and you've danced in a boarding house parlor once or twice. The madam snorts. Sweetheart, if you can pretend to love a man while looking straight through him, you'll do just fine. That's the real job description. You're not here to fall in love. You're here to act like every lonely, busted-up cowpoke in town is the most interesting man you've ever met. You're here to sell a fantasy. It's not always sexual. It's often sadder than that. You're selling hope, attention, the illusion of importance. Sometimes you're the only person who's looked these men in the eye in weeks. The audition is informal but unavoidable. The madam calls for the piano man named Silas, grumpy as a cactus and twice as prickly, and tells him to play something that don't make me want to die. He plunks out a tune somewhere between ragtime and tavern dirge, and you stand up and try to remember how your limbs are supposed to move. You do a few turns, flash a smile, shake your skirts like you mean it. The madam watches without expression, then interrupts. Laugh like you're drunk and flirting. You do. Then she says, now do it like you hate yourself a little. That's when she nods, finally satisfied. She waves her cigar like a scepter. You'll start tonight. You'll last a week. I'll give you a proper bed instead of that cot in the corner. Any man gives you trouble, you come straight to me or Billy behind the bar. Don't take anything that doesn't jingle. Don't drink unless it's watered down. And don't ever let a miner walk you home alone. You nod, trying to absorb all of it. Your throat is dry. You're not sure if it's nerves or just the heat. Then comes the paperwork, if you can call it that. No contract, just your name, a few vague rules scrolled on the back of a liquor invoice, and a warning that a lady's reputation is her only real currency. Irony hits you a second later. You're not exactly a lady anymore, are you? You're shown to a narrow room just off the kitchen to store your things. It's barely bigger than a closet with a dented wash basin and a cot with a yellowed pillow. You won't sleep there long if you earn enough to upgrade to an upstairs room. That's the goal. The upstairs girls get windows, doors that lock, and the occasional customer who leaves flowers instead of bruises. The kitchen girls ignore you at first, heads down over dirty pots and endless potatoes. One gives you a sidelong glance and mutters, "She'll be gone by Tuesday." It's Monday. That night, you're handed a tray of drinks and told to flirt with the men at table 3. No one explains what flirt means in this context. You figure it out fast. A hand on a shoulder here. A laugh that's a little too loud there. You remember that phrase, pretend to love a man while looking straight through him. It works. Table 3 is 3 prospectors and a ranch hand who smells like cowhide and kerosene. You pour drinks, let one of them call you darling, and steer the conversation just enough to keep the whiskey flowing. Every so often, the madam sweeps by like a velvet hawk, watching to see who's working and who's slouching. If you stand still too long, she snaps her fingers. Motion equals money. Smiling equals money. You're an actress on a sticky floor stage, and your paycheck depends on how well you perform. You're not allowed to sit unless you're invited. And even then, it's risky. Some men think a girl who sits wants something more. Others just want company while they lose at cards. It's a tightrope walk. Too cold. You make no tips. Too warm. You risk a shove into the alley. Midway through your shift, a miner tries to grab your hip, and you slap his hand away. He stumbles up red-faced, shouting something about uppy city girls. The bartender, Billy, appears behind you so fast, it's like he teleported. He hauls the miner out by the collar and throws him into the street. Everyone claps. You're shaking. Anyway, later in the back room, the madam offers you a drink and a nod of approval. "Not bad for your first night," she says. "You'll toughen up." You already feel it happening. Your nerves fray a little. Your spine straightens. You learn not to flinch when someone hollers, not to cry when someone sneers. You survive. That's your job. Now, one historical fact: many saloon girls were hired through vague advertisements in newspapers or word-of-mouth recruiters who offered entertainment work in western towns, often leaving out the rougher details. One quirky fact: some saloons required girls to pass a mock flirtation test before being hired. Essentially a live demonstration of how charming and marketable they were under pressure. One debate. Some historians believe madams acted as protectors for their girls, while others argue they were just another layer of exploitation in a system built to drain every ounce of charm and coin out of desperate young women. You return to your cot that night with sore cheeks from smiling and aching feet from constant motion. The pillow smells like dust. You close your eyes and dream of quieter places, but even in sleep, you can hear the piano still playing. There's no real morning here, just degrees of exhaustion. You wake up not because you're rested, but because the sun slices through the high windows and someone drops a tray of glasses in the hallway. You groan, roll over, and immediately regret it. Your knees pop. Your shoulders feel like they've been rolled over by a wagon wheel. And the imprint of your corset bond is still etched into your back like some kind of cruel tattoo. You splash water from the cracked basin onto your face. It's lukewarm and smells faintly of rust, but it shocks your eyes open. There's a sliver of mirror nailed crooked to the wall. And it shows you a woman with smeared rouge and pillowcased cheeks. That's you or someone wearing your skin. You smile at her. Undoing the corset takes too long, and putting it back on by yourself is pure agony. So, you develop a method. Loosen it just enough to breathe. Leave your boots half on and fall into bed like a collapsed marionette. This, you're told, is normal. The first real task of the day, getting clean, at least by frontier standards. There are no bathtubs unless you pay, and even then, the water's been used by 3 people before you. So, you settle for a bucket bath. Tepid water poured over a washcloth scrubbing your arms and neck while trying not to get your skirt soaked. You pinch your cheeks for color. Dab on a little powder and pray that no one notices the circles under your eyes. Downstairs, the saloon's already starting to rumble. The floors have been swept barely. The smell of last night's spilled beer clings to the walls like a ghost. The piano is quiet, its keys covered with a threadbare cloth until Silas shows up around dusk. You help wipe down the bar, swat a mouse off the counter, and reshelf bottles, some full, most empty. Your shift officially begins when the lamps are lit and the front doors swing wide open to welcome another round of sunburned saddle-saw dreamers. This is when the performance begins. The first few customers are always quiet. Ranchers and blacksmiths who work sun-up to sundown, drinking with heavy hands and heavier silences. You ease in beside them, slow and polite, asking how the cattle are doing, how the crops are faring, if their backs still ache from last week's storm. They don't say much, but if you're lucky, they leave a nickel on the bar when they finish their drink. By 7 o'clock, the energy changes. Miners start rolling in loud, dirty, pockets heavy with gold dust or fool's gold. No one can ever really tell. They're rowdy and unpredictable, but they tip well if you pretend their stories are interesting. You ask them how deep the shaft is, how many rocks fell this time, whether anyone's still down there. One guy swears he struck a vein that'll make him a millionaire by Christmas. You say, well, don't forget little old me when you're rich. And he throws $2 silver in your garter. You tuck them away fast. There's always someone watching. Around 8, the saloon hits its stride. The music kicks in. The tables fill. The air thickens with smoke and sweat. You're dancing now. Not in some grand theatrical way, but weaving between tables, swaying to the music, pulling men out of their chairs for a clumsy waltz across the uneven floor. Your feet start to blister, but you keep smiling. You smile so hard your jaw cramps. You laugh like you mean it. Sometimes you do mean it, which is even stranger. And in between all of that, you pour drinks, not just to make money, but because keeping men drunk keeps them happy. And happy men don't start brawls, or at least not as many. You're a peacekeeper with a tray of watered-down whiskey and a crooked grin. There's no official end to your shift. It tapers off somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning when the piano man starts playing slower songs and the last card game ends in curses and empty pockets. You sneak a sandwich from the kitchen, cold meat between stale bread, and sit on the back steps to eat in peace. You don't care if the alley smells like horse piss. It's quiet and no one's asking you to smile. You watch the stars blink above the rooftops and think about how many people you've touched today. Shoulders, elbows, rough hands brushing against yours as you pass them. Drinks or pulled them onto the floor. You can feel the grime of 100 strangers on your skin. It sticks even after you scrub. Back inside, the madam's counting coins. She always counts. She knows how much each girl made down to the penny. You hand over your cut, half of everything you earned, sometimes more if you borrowed a dress or broke a glass. What's left is yours. If you're smart, you'll hide some in your boot or behind the loose brick upstairs. Trusting a madam with your future is like trusting a rattlesnake to mind your baby. One historical fact: saloon girls often work 12 to 16 hours straight with no breaks and no set shifts. Their pay depended entirely on drink commissions and tips. One quirky fact: some saloons issued girls punch cards, literally hole punched each time they convinced a customer to buy a drink. 10 drinks, bonus $1. Like the saddest coffee shop loyalty program ever. One debate scholars disagree whether these daily routines were survivable long-term or whether most saloon girls burned out after a few years and disappeared into marriage, madness, or oblivion. You finally collapse onto your cot just before dawn. Your arms are bruised, your ankles swollen, your corset still laced because you're too tired to undo it. The only thing louder than your heartbeat is the silence once the music stops. You lie there staring at the ceiling and wonder what it would be like to sleep for a week or to wake up somewhere where you don't have to smile. It doesn't take long to realize that the only constant in your life now is the exchange of things. Your time and your touch, your smile, all for cash, and you learn quickly that not all coins are created equal. Some clang solid and honest on the bar top. Others feel too light, worn thin, maybe counterfeit. Still, you pocket what you can because here money is survival. And survival doesn't ask questions. You don't have a salary, no set wage, no paycheck. What you have is a cut, maybe half, sometimes less, of every drink you coax out of a man's hands and into his belly. You could sell watered-down whiskey to a grieving widower if you fluttered your eyelashes just right. And you have. You hate how easy it's become. The more drinks they buy, the more you earn. So, you laugh louder, lean in closer, and gently suggest that maybe another round would help them forget just a little bit more. Tips are your lifeblood. There's no real rhyme or reason to them. Some men drop coins like it's nothing, just for the pleasure of seeing you bend to pick them up. Others will talk your ear off for an hour and leave you nothing but a whiff of tobacco breath and the mild stink of disappointment. You get better at spotting the spenders, the ones with clean boots and stained knuckles, with gold toothpicks and loud laughs. You cater to them like they're kings. The broke ones get a polite smile and a slow retreat. There are tricks, of course. You learn to upcharge the drinks the men buy for you. They're mostly tea or colored water in a shot glass. You sell the illusion of camaraderie, not the alcohol itself. The madam calls it preservation. You call it playing smart. No girl lasts long if she drinks everything a man hands her. If you did, you'd be sloshed by sundown, broke by midnight, and dead in the gutter by the weekend. And then there are the side deals. Officially, you're not a prostitute. The saloon's license says entertainment, but in practice, things get blurrier than a bottle of bootleg gin. Some girls go upstairs with men. Sometimes for an extra few dollars, sometimes for jewelry, sometimes just because they're tired of saying no. It's not always about sex. Sometimes it's just about company, real or pretend. You've seen grown men pay to lie next to a girl and cry. You've seen others hand over gold coins just to kiss a woman's hand and pretend she's someone else. You, though, you haven't gone upstairs. Not yet. Not officially. The madam doesn't push. She says, you'll know when it's worth it. Just make sure you get paid first. That's rule number 1. The house always gets its share. If you go rogue, if you make a deal in the alley, or sneak off without cutting the madam in, word gets around. And not the good kind of word. There are stories, always stories about girls who broke the rules. One called Millie supposedly ran off with a customer who promised her a wedding ring and a house in Denver. They found her a week later in a dried-up creek bed, still wearing her garter and one earring. No one claimed the body. The madam just sighed and gave her room to a girl from Wichita the same day. So, you keep your dealings honest, or as honest as they can be in a place like this. You flirt, you dance, you pour drinks, you take tips and flash smiles like you're made of them. And sometimes you lie through your teeth to get another dollar. Like when you tell a gambler he's your favorite. Or when you say you've never met a man so brave, or that you're saving up to open a flower shop, that last one. You say it often. You almost believe it yourself. Now, your earnings go in 3 places. The madam's till, your food, and your hidden stash. You've got a spot under a loose floorboard behind the wash basin. It's not much yet. A few dollars in coins, some folded bills, a cameo necklace you won in a bet. It's not enough to leave, but it's enough to dream. And dreams out here are the most expensive thing of all. Every week, a man named Walter comes around with a bag full of fake coins. He exchanges them for a cut of your tips, passing off clipped silver or foreign money that looks close enough to fool a drunk. It's risky, but sometimes you're desperate. If you get caught using it at the general store, the shopkeeper throws you out. Or worse, he tells the sheriff. You don't ask where Walter gets them. You just nod, trade, and hope the coins make it through the night. One night, a banker from Kansas City walks in. He smells like cigars and citrus oil. His shoes are polished. You make more in 1 hour with him than you did all week. He buys round after round, mostly just to watch you pour. He doesn't talk much, but he watches you like he's memorizing your silhouette. When he leaves, he presses $5 into your hand. For your trouble, he says, you don't ask what he means by trouble. You just thank him, slide the coins into your garter, and exhale for the first time in hours. One historical fact, saloon girls were often paid through a commission system, typically receiving half the price of each drink they sold, incentivizing them to keep the booze flowing. One quirky fact, many Western towns created their own tokens or script to be used in saloons. Essentially local bar currency which could be exchanged for drinks or entertainment but was often worthless outside. One debate scholars argue whether this economic system exploited women's labor or gave them rare financial independence in a time when most professions barred female workers. At the end of the night, you count your earnings. Some coins are slick with beer. One still has a tooth mark in it. You don't care. You just count. Every dollar gets you closer to that flower shop, or at least farther from here. You fall asleep to the jingle of coins hidden under your floorboard and dream of a place where men pay to listen to you talk, not just to touch. Let's talk about the drinks, because while you're out here pretending to be a sweet-talking enchantress with dreams in your eyes, half your shift revolves around slinging rot liquor that could probably strip paint off a wall. The bottles behind the bar might look fancy, imported labels, foreign-sounding names, but most of it's just cheap whiskey cut with turpentine, tobacco spit, or something worse. It's strong enough to make a mule weep, and sometimes cloudy enough that you can't see through it. But men drink it anyway, and they buy it from you because you smile like it's champagne. The drinks you pour aren't the same as the ones you drink. You learn that trick your first week. The madam teaches you herself. Never drink the real stuff, she says. You'll be on the floor by midnight and ruined by Sunday. Instead, the saloon stocks something called ladies' tea. It's just colored water in a bottle that looks like bourbon and it's your best friend. When a customer buys you a drink, you tilt your glass back like you mean it. Let the liquid touch your lips and pray he's too drunk to notice it doesn't burn. But even that can backfire. Some men want you to get drunk. They think it makes you more fun, more pliable, more willing to do what they want upstairs. You've mastered the art of fake tipsiness. A giggle here, a stumble there. You twirl a curl around your finger and slur your words just enough to keep them interested, but not too much. You don't want to look like easy prey. The real stuff, though. You've tried it once. You were dared by Frenchie, who said it would build character. One shot and your throat burned like a blacksmith's forge. Your eyes watered. Your stomach clenched like it wanted to reject your entire life. You laughed it off then, but your body remembered. It still flinches every time a bottle is uncorked too close. And the pipe, that's a different temptation. Opium is the saloon's secret twin. Not every girl uses it, but enough do that you notice when someone's eyes glaze over during a dance. There's a small back room curtained off from the main floor with low couches and a haze of perfumed smoke. It's for special clients, men who pay extra to recline, relax, and drift. Sometimes they invite a girl to sit with them to share the pipe, to whisper in their ear while their thoughts float far above their body. You've only gone in once. The smell was sweet and heavy, almost sickly. It made your heart beat slow. Made the world feel like it was underwater. But it also made you forget your name for a minute, and that scared you more than any pistol ever has. Some girls swear by it. Takes the edge off, they say. Lets you float past the worst parts. But you've seen what it does after a while. One girl, Addie, started using it nightly. At first, she was just softer, sleepier. If you ever get out of here, he says, look him up. You tuck the note into your stocking just in case, but singing comes with risk. The more attention you get, the more jealous the other girls become. One of them accidentally spills wine on your dress the next night. Another tells a customer you lip sync. You learn to watch your back even while you're watching your pitch. Popularity here is like dynamite. You might use it to blow open a future or it might go off in your face. One historical fact, many saloon girls doubled as performers, singing and dancing as part of their job to keep the crowd lively and encourage drinking. One quirky fact, some piano players were paid not in cash but in free drinks or room and board, explaining why many were constantly drunk or borderline feral. One debate. Historians disagree on whether these performance roles gave women a legitimate path into entertainment careers or just further exploited their talents for the sake of the bar's profits. That night, after the last note fades and Silas mutters something about his fingers being cursed, you sit alone on the piano bench and let your hands rest on the keys. You don't know how to play, not really, but you press one note, middle C, and listen to it ring out into the empty saloon. It sounds like hope. Or maybe just a lie you've learned to sing real pretty. You never forget the sound of a gun being cocked in the middle of a song. It cuts through piano notes like a knife through silk. 1 second you're mid-laugh with a customer who smells like peppermint and saddle leather. The next the whole saloon freezes like someone hit pause. All eyes snap toward the source. And there it is, a shiny silver revolver being waved by a man with shaking hands and whiskey-glazed eyes. You stop breathing. Everyone does. The bartender, Billy, is already moving slow and steady like he's stepping across thin ice. No sudden motions. The piano man eases off the keys, hands lifted. The madam's nowhere in sight. She always disappears when bullets show up. That's a survival tactic. The rest of you just wait and hope to God he's too drunk to aim straight. That's saloon life. 1 minute you're twirling in skirts and laughter. The next you're crouched behind a poker table, praying the walls are thick enough to stop a stray bullet. Fights break out over cards, over girls, over who looked at someone's horse funny. This place is a powder keg, and all it takes is one insult or one lost hand for someone to start lighting matches. You're not new anymore. You know what to do. You duck instinctively behind the nearest barrel, lift your skirts just enough to move fast, and try not to scream. Screaming makes you a target. You learn that after the first time a bar stool flew past your head and shattered on the floor behind you. This particular gunman is named Clancy or maybe Clarence. You can't remember. He's in here often, usually drunk, usually harmless, but tonight he's shouting about someone cheating at cards and how he's not going to be made a fool of. He waves the gun around like he's trying to swat flies with it. You peek over the edge of the table just long enough to see Billy reach out, grab the barrel, and twist. One shot goes off, deafening. A puff of smoke. A chandelier chain snaps and the whole thing swings down and crashes into a table, sending glass and cards and whiskey flying. But miraculously, no one's hit. Clancy's tackled, disarmed, and dragged outside like a sack of potatoes. You exhale for what feels like the first time in minutes. Everyone claps. Of course they do. It's a show to them. It always is. Cleanup begins immediately. Broken glass is swept into piles. Blood, only from a minor cut this time, is wiped up with old towels, and the piano man picks up the tune like nothing happened. You go right back to work. That's the rule. You don't stop. You don't show fear. The customers expect the girls to be unshakable, like part of the decor. Frilly, smiling, and fireproof. But you're shaking on the inside. Fights don't always end cleanly. A few months back, a man accused one of the girls, Rosie, of stealing from his coat while he was passed out. She denied it. The madam backed her up, but the man didn't care. He came back with friends, busted through the back door, and dragged Rosie out by the hair. Billy stopped them eventually, but not before she got a black eye and a bruised rib. The sheriff never came. The law only shows up when someone's bleeding in the street, or when a business owner complains about the smell. That's why you learn to defend yourself. Every girl carries something. Hair pins sharp enough to draw blood. Garters with hidden blades. Perfume bottles filled with a mix of rose water and pepper. You keep your own secret weapon tucked into your boot. A small deering pistol. A gift from Ruby after your second week. Don't hesitate, she said ice hard. You pull it, you shoot, or don't bother. You haven't had to use it yet. But just knowing it's there helps you sleep. The saloon has rules posted on a sign by the bar, but no one really reads them. No firearms inside, no spitting, no fighting. Every one of those rules is broken nightly. The bouncer, a man called Tree because he's as wide as one, enforces them with a mix of threats and the occasional headlock. He's quiet, calm, and terrifying. Most folks know better than to cross him. Still, the chaos is constant. Chairs get broken weekly. The walls have bullet holes, some patched, some left as warnings. One of the mirrors above the bar is cracked from when a whiskey bottle was thrown during an argument about politics. You don't even know what the argument was. You just remember diving under a table and swearing when the glass rained down like glittering teeth. And yet somehow the danger becomes normal. Not good. Not but kicked it. It keeps you alert. Keeps you fast. You learn to read a room in seconds. Who's drunk enough to tip? Who's too drunk to handle rejection? Who's watching you too closely? You learn to spot the twitch of a hand going for a holster before anyone else. You learn to smile at the right man at the right time to stop him from ruining everyone's night. One historical fact, gunfights in saloons weren't just a movie myth. Many frontier towns saw regular violence inside these establishments, often due to gambling, intoxication, or personal grudges. One quirky fact, some saloons hired local actors to reenact fake gunfights during slow nights to entertain tourists and gamblers, complete with blanks and fake blood. Real drama, less risk. One debate. Historians question how frequent actual gun violence was versus how much was exaggerated in newspapers and dime novels. Was it really that wild or just good for business to seem dangerous? By the end of the night, after the adrenaline fades and your ears stop ringing, you wipe a smear of soot off your cheek and check your boots for damage. The chandelier's gone. The broken table's already been replaced with a crate and a tablecloth. It's like nothing happened. You look around and realize the worst part isn't the chaos. It's how easily everyone goes back to normal. You wonder what that says about you, and then you go back to work because that's what saloon girls do. You take your time getting ready tonight. Not because you're feeling glamorous or sentimental. No, it's because you've developed a system. Every layer, every curl, every pin is strategic armor. Really, the kind still with sequins. You open your little wooden vanity box and lay out your tools like a surgeon preparing for a risky operation. Powder, rouge, cold cream, pins, lashes made of horsehair, a cracked handheld mirror, and a stub of soap that's technically lavender if you breathe deep enough and squint. You begin with your face, chalk first, basic white powder to even things out and dull your sunburned nose. It cakes fast, especially in the heat, but under lamplight, it makes your skin look soft and cool, almost aristocratic. You follow it with a touch of rouge blended high across your cheekbones and dabbed on your lips until they look fuller and redder than they actually are. Some girls use carmine made from crushed beetles and it stains like a sin you can't scrub off. Others favor a dab of mercuric face cream that promises glow and longevity and quietly shaves years off your liver. You stick to what works and doesn't kill you outright. Your eyebrows are darkened with burnt matchstick ash. Not too much. You're not going for circus clown. Just sultry but tired. A touch of lamp black smudged under your eyes adds a smoky effect that makes you look like you've survived something mysterious. You have. Then it's time for hair. Yours is pinned up in a loose mass of curls. Not natural ones, but the kind coaxed from a heated iron and a prayer. You burn your fingers nightly. So, and the smell of scorched hair now reminds you of payday. The transformation is unsettling. You don't look like yourself. You look like a painting. Someone men will tip coins to just for the chance to say they saw you blink. And that's the goal. You put on the mask and you wear it better than most. Wigs are common, though you haven't resorted to one yet. Some girls swear by them, claiming they save time and hide hair that has gone stringy from sweat and smoke. The wigs come in curls and braids, pinned and powdered, sometimes with ribbons sewn in. But they itch, they slide, and there's always a chance a drunk will tug it clean off your head in the middle of a dance. Then comes the costume. You call it a costume now because calling it a dress would be generous. Tonight's piece is crimson with black trim and a hem just above the ankle. Scandalous by Eastern standards, but tame out here. The neckline dips lower than your morals. The sleeves are puffed like you're hosting a funeral in a fever dream. And there's enough fringe to make a stage curtain jealous. It's heavier than it looks. Layers of satin, hidden pockets for perfume and pins, a tiny flask strapped to your thigh. You slip on your corset, a deep breath and a long groan, and cinch it just tight enough to lift your chest and take your appetite. Your waist disappears. Your spine protests. Your lungs compress, but you look damn good. And that, of course, is what counts. Boots come next, heeled, laced up to mid-cuff, slicked with a bit of oil to shine under the lantern light. You've added an insole cut from an old newspaper to make them bearable. Your toes hate you, but your calves look incredible. Finally, accessories. A choker necklace, a pair of earrings, one missing its match, a fan tucked into your garter, and a silk ribbon tied in your hair that you think belonged to someone else. You don't ask. The things girls leave behind in this place usually come with stories no one wants to tell. By the time you're finished, the mirror reflects someone who could make a man forget his wedding vows, and still smile about it afterward. You glance down at your hands, nails scrubbed clean, knuckles bruised from yesterday's near scuffle, and you wonder how long you can keep this up. But the bell rings downstairs. Time to stop thinking. Out on the floor, the lighting does most of the work for you. Low, golden, and just smoky enough to blur the imperfections. You step into the saloon like you own it. You feel the shift. Men turn to look. Some nod. Others grin. One raises a glass in silent greeting. You don't smile too fast. You let the gaze settle. Let the silence stretch just a second too long before you offer a smirk. Just enough mystery to make them pay for the next moment. The illusion works. You dance. You flirt. You laugh like you haven't cried in weeks. A man tells you you're the most beautiful thing he's seen west of the Mississippi. You thank him and pretend it's the first time you've heard that. This month. Someone else tries to grab your waist, too bold, too fast, and you step aside with the grace of someone who's done this 100 times and hasn't killed anyone yet. Later, backstage, you unpin your hair and let the sweat roll down your back. Ruby's sitting at the vanity beside you, blotting her forehead with a handkerchief soaked in lavender oil. Think they'll still be doing this in 10 years? She asks. You don't answer right away. You both know the truth. The makeup, the gowns, the illusion. It's not forever. It's borrowed time. One historical fact. Saloon girls relied heavily on makeup and stylized fashion to stand out in dark, crowded bars. Arsenic-based face powders and lead-rich rouges were common despite their toxicity. One quirky fact, some saloon girls mixed cold dust into their cold cream to create makeshift eyeliner and experimented with shellac to shape their lashes long before mascara was invented. One debate. Scholars argue whether the elaborate beauty routines empowered women by giving them control over their image or merely reinforced their objectification by tailoring them to male desire. You wipe off the paint, peel off the corset, and return to the version of yourself that no one tips for. The mirror doesn't lie, but it doesn't comfort either. You've become very good at wearing someone else's face. The question is whether you remember your own. They say women are each other's worst enemies, but in the saloon, it's more complicated than that. The girls are your competition, sure, but they're also the only ones who understand what it feels like to be trapped inside silken expectations. They know what it means to count tips by candlelight, to smile at men you hate, to dance until your toes bleed and your corsets soak through. You share secrets and powder rage and ribbons. But you also know not to trust anyone completely. Take Frenchie for example. She's been here longer more than almost anyone. Nobody knows if she's actually French. Her accent comes and goes, but she swears she once danced in Paris and served drinks to royalty. King of Belgium, she says, lips red as blood. Tipped me a diamond earring. Just one. No one's ever seen the earring. Still, she walks like she owns the joint. She gets the best tables, the wealthiest clients, and the choicest dresses from the madam's closet. And she guards it all like a dog with a bone. Then there's Daisy. Sweet, round-faced, always humming something. She acts like a lamb, but she's the most ruthless one in the building. You once saw her smile as she accidentally stepped on another girl's hem mid-dance, sending her sprawling into a picture of beer. Daisy giggled and offered her a handkerchief like it was a kindness. It wasn't. The girl left the next morning. Daisy got her room. You keep your eyes open. The girls talk sweet when the customers are watching, linking arms, calling each other darling and sugar. But as soon as the men are gone, the edges come out. Dresses go missing. Perfume gets switched for vinegar. Pins appear in corsets where no pin should be. And the worst part, most of it happens with a smile. Still, there's a strange kind of love buried in the rivalry. You've seen girls fight like cats 1 minute and patch each other up the next. Ruby once slapped Frenchie across the face over a poker player, then stayed up all night nursing her through a fever. You and Daisy hadn't spoken since the hem incident, but last week she slid you a bit of coin under the table when you came up short for a doctor's visit. Don't make it weird, she said. It's just business. You find yourself constantly measuring. Who's above you? Who's slipping? Who's worth aligning with? It's a social ladder built on stilettos and guesswork. The girls who climb to the top get privileges. The madam gives them first pick of the new dresses, first shot at the high-rolling customers and protection when things get messy. The girls who fall behind, they get replaced quietly, efficiently. You don't even hear the door slam shut. There was one girl, Annabelle, who used to run the floor. Smart, sharp-tonged, quick with a wink. She ratted more tips in one night than most did in a week. Then one day, she just unraveled. No one knows what happened. Maybe a broken heart, maybe a broken mind. She started forgetting her lines, arriving late, snapping at customers. One night, she screamed in the middle of a song, tore off her necklace, and ran barefoot into the alley. She never came back. Her room was cleared out by morning. Daisy moved in before the sheets cooled. You learn not to get too close. Friendships in a saloon are like loose teeth, bound to fall out when the pressure gets too high. Still late at night, after the customers leave and the lanterns go dim, the girls gather in the dressing room to peel off their glamour and talk like real people. They sit in their slips and stockings, legs crossed, hair undone, and tell stories, mostly lies, but beautiful ones. Stories about the homes they left, the men they almost loved, the futures they still pretend are waiting. Frenchie says she's saving up to open a theater. Daisy wants a little house near the water. Ruby dreams of a horse farm. You say you'll open a flower shop and everyone rolls their eyes. Always with the damn flowers, someone mutters. But they smile because deep down every girl here needs one impossible dream to keep her sane. One historical fact, rivalries between saloon girls were common and often fierce, especially in establishments where competition for tips and high-paying customers dictated survival. One quirky fact, in some saloons, girls ranked in an unofficial hierarchy. The queen of the saloon might have a private dressing room, exclusive access to the piano man, and veto power over song choices. 1. Debate. Scholars argue whether the competition between women in these environments was created by the system or a natural byproduct of limited resources and unstable positions. That night, you catch Frenchie watching you across the room. She lifts her brow, sips her drink, and gives you the tiniest of nods. You nod back. Not quite friendship, not quite war, just acknowledgement. You're still here. You're still standing. And in this place, that's enough to earn a flicker of respect. After your shift, you sit with Ruby on the back steps and pass a flask between you. The stars are out, and the town is finally quiet. She leans her head on your shoulder without a word, and you let her. In this life, sometimes your enemies are your only comfort. The rules aren't written down anywhere official, not in a handbook, not nailed to the wall. They're passed down, whispered, memorized through bruises and slip-ups, drilled into you by the madam and reinforced by the sideways glances of the girls who've been here longer. You break one, even by accident, and you'll feel it. Maybe not right away, but you will. The madam is the enforcer, the judge, the keeper of order. She's not what people think. She doesn't swan around in feathers or sip absinthe in a fainting chair. She's lean, sharp, and no nonsense. Hair always in a tight bun, voice like cracked leather. Her name's Maeve, though most jesters call her Miss M. She wears black almost exclusively. Not out of mourning, you suspect, but because it hides stains and broadcasts authority. Miss M runs the red feather like a battlefield general. Everyone answers to her, from the bartender to the piano man to the bouncer built like a freight horse. She has the books memorized, the girls' shifts tracked in her head, and a sixth sense for drama. Step out of line and she's there before you've even realized you stumbled. Rule 1, never touch another girl's man. Man here meaning regular customer, high roller, or anyone who tips with gold and lingers too long. If Frenchie's got someone hooked, he's off limits. If Daisy's been feeding a drunk fantasy about running off together, don't mess with it. Girls have been fired for less than a misplaced flirt. Rule 2, no stealing from the till, from the madam, from each other. Theft is the one sin Maeve won't forgive. She catches you with someone's perfume, someone's corset, even a hairpin, you're gone. Doesn't matter how sweet your smile or how much whiskey you sell. Out the door, no second chances. Rule 3, stay pretty. That sounds cruel, and it is, but it's part of the trade. You're expected to show up clean, painted, hair curled, and corset laced. The customers come to dream, not to see reality. Miss M doesn't care if your dog died or your ribs ache or you haven't eaten in 2 days. If you can't stand up and smile, she says, you can't stay here. You've seen girls try to work with fevers, with sprained ankles, with bruises hidden under pet-tick coats. The job doesn't allow a weakness. Rule 4, don't drink with the customers unless you can handle it. This one's less enforced, but equally dangerous. You lose control, you lose face, and when you lose face, the men stop paying. You're here to keep them drunk and spending, not to become one of them. There are unwritten rules, too, like don't talk about home. Don't cry where anyone can see you. Don't leave your money out. Don't tell the truth unless it benefits you. And for God's sake, don't fall in love with a customer. That one's carved into your soul like scripture. Miss M doesn't run the saloon with affection. She runs it with efficiency, but she's not heartless. When one of the girls gets sick, she calls for the doctor herself. When a man steps too far out of line, she orders Tree to handle it, and he does without blinking. She's protected you more than once, even if she doesn't make a show of it. One time, a drunk followed you up the stairs and wouldn't take no for an answer. You managed to shove him away and scream. Maeve was there in seconds. She didn't say a word, just pulled out a black jack from her apron pocket and cracked the man across the jaw. Then she told you to change your dress and get back to work. He was gone by morning. Respect in this place is earned in strange ways. Some girls hate her. Say she's cold, manipulative, just another cog in the machine. Maybe she is, but you don't forget that she was once like you. There's a photograph on her desk, faded, tucked behind a broken perfume bottle. A younger Maeve in a satin dress, smiling too wide, surrounded by girls who aren't here anymore. Every once in a while, you catch her staring at it, her mouth pulled tight. Maybe she misses them, maybe she doesn't, but she remembers. That much is obvious. And then there are the punishments. They are not always violent. Sometimes they're subtle. You show up late. Your best table goes to someone else. You mouth off to the wrong customer. Your dress mysteriously disappears from the dressing room. You don't earn your keep. You get stuck cleaning the spittoons at sunrise. Public humiliation is the real weapon here. It stings worse than any slap. But if you play by the rules or close enough to fake it, Maeve treats you fair. She keeps a ledger of who owes what, dresses loaned, broken glasses, doctor fees, and she never adds a dime more than she should. You've checked twice. She even gives bonuses during holidays, like clockwork. A coin here, a new ribbon there, enough to keep hope alive without giving anyone ideas of leaving. One historical fact, many saloon girls worked under strict rules enforced by madams or managers who controlled every aspect of their professional and personal lives, including curfews, earnings, and behavior on and off the floor. One quirky fact, some madams were known to carry ledgers that listed not only debts and earnings, but also notes about girls' strengths, weaknesses, and reliability in the crisis, like human Yelp reviews. One debate. Historians are split on whether madams were maternal protectors of vulnerable women or shrewd business owners exploiting their labor under a glossy pretense of care. Tonight, as you lace up your boots and tie on your choker, you glance at the door to Maeve's office. It's closed as usual, but you swear you see movement behind the frosted glass, her silhouette watching. You nod to yourself, adjust your bodice, and step onto the floor. The rules haven't changed, and neither have you, not yet. There's a knock at your door just after sunset, the kind that makes you pause with one boot half-laced and your fingers sticky from hair parade. Not the madam's knock. Hers is sharp, purposeful. Not Ruby's either. She never knocks. No, this is tentative, like someone unsure they even belong on this side of the hallway. You open the door cautiously, your foot behind it just in case, and find a man holding a half-sea crush bouquet of prairie flowers. "Evening," he says, looking anywhere but your face. "I was wondering if you'd walk with me." It's not the first time. Every few weeks, one of them gets ideas. Sometimes they bring gifts, candy, a pocket mirror, a scarf that smells like pipe smoke. They all want to believe they're different, that you'll see something in them worth stepping away from the piano and into the sunset. It's the great Western fantasy. You're the dusty town's golden girl, and they're going to be the one to save you. As if that's all you're waiting for. As if you haven't saved yourself a dozen times this month already. This one's name is Henry. A blacksmith maybe, or a wheelwright. You've served him drinks a handful of times, danced with him once or twice, polite, gentle, doesn't leer like most of them. You like him in a distant sort of way, the way you like a cool breeze or a warm biscuit. Comforting, but not something you count on. You accept the flowers with a nod and say you'll think about the walk. He leaves with a hopeful smile and a tip of his hat, and you shut the door softly behind him. Then you toss the bouquet into a vase already crowded with similar offerings. All wilted and leaning in on each other like they've given up. The flowers come and go, the men do, too. What lingers is the way they look at you, like they've made up a story in their head and cast you as the leading lady. Love here is a performance. The girls know it, and most of the men suspect it, but that doesn't stop either party from playing along. Customers come in convinced they're in a real romance. They ask your favorite color. They talk about their mothers. They tell you about the homesteads they're building, the land they've cleared, the houses they plan to fill. "I could use a woman like you," they say. Like it's a compliment, like being used is the dream. You've been proposed to 3 times. Once by a gambler with bad teeth and a gold watch. Once by a cowboy who smelled like goats. And once by a school teacher from Missouri who said he had read the Bible every night if you just agreed to wear long skirts and quit the saloon. You said no to all of them gently but firmly. You've seen the girls who say yes. Most don't end up better off. Some come crawling back after the man drinks away their savings or leaves them with 2 kids and a cough. Others disappear entirely, their names scratched off the madam's ledger like they never existed. But it's not all bad. Sometimes there's tenderness in the lies. A man will stroke your hand and talk to you like you're the only soul in the world who understands him. He'll buy you a drink, tuck a flower behind your ear, promise to come back next week. And sometimes he does. You let yourself believe it matters just for the length of a song. Then there are the dangerous ones. Not all customers want love. Some want ownership. They smile sweet and speak soft. But their eyes say mine. They grip too tight during dances. They linger too long in doorways. They ask questions they have no right to. One of them followed Ruby home last month. She showed up the next morning with her sleeve torn and a scratch down her neck. The madam paid the sheriff to scare the man off, but no charges were filed. Just a misunderstanding, he said. Ruby hasn't smiled the same since. You have a system now. If a man starts asking too many personal questions, you redirect. If he starts getting possessive, you switch tables. If he shows up every night, you tell the madam. And if he brings a ring, you prepare your best fake cry and say you're already married to a soldier who died heroically. It's enough to make most of them retreat with dignity intact. One man, though, James, was different. He didn't talk much. Didn't try to impress you, just listened. Brought you little things, licorice, a booklet of poems, a pair of gloves lined with rabbit fur. He never asked for anything, and that made him dangerous in a whole new way, because you started to believe he might mean it. You started thinking, maybe this one's real. He was gone before winter. Left a note in the madam's office. No goodbye. The gloves are still in your drawer. One historical fact, romantic relationships between saloon girls and their customers were not uncommon, though most were short-lived and ended with the girl returning to work after the man left or ran out of money. One quirky fact, some saloon girls created elaborate fake love letters from soldiers at war or Eastern beaux and read them aloud to ward off persistent suitors. One debate. Scholars still argue whether saloon girls were emotionally manipulated into romantic entanglements or whether they actively leveraged men's affections as a calculated survival tactic. Tonight, as you dance with a man who calls you sweetheart too early and holds you just a little too close. You smile through the performance. You know he'll be gone in a week, maybe a day. Maybe he'll come back with a ring and a fantasy. Either way, you'll still be here, corset-laced, lips painted, dancing like you've never been kissed. And maybe you'll take that walk with Henry tomorrow. Or maybe not. Depends on the weather. Depends on how many lies you're willing to live through before breakfast. It starts with a cough. A little thing dry, persistent, harmless enough. You tell yourself it's from the smoke or maybe from yelling over the piano music too much. But it lingers, sneaking up your throat during dances, showing up when you're trying to sing. You sip water, chew licorice, and smear a little camphor on your chest and carry on. But in the back of your mind, you know better. Illness is the ghost that haunts every corner of the saloon. You learn quickly which sounds to worry about. The hollow cough that echoes too long. The sharp intake of breath followed by silence. The moans behind a closed door that aren't about pleasure. No one talks about it openly. It's bad luck. But everyone's listening, watching, counting how many days a girl's been too tired to work. How long since she smiled without effort. Some get better, some don't. And when a girl doesn't, well, there's a room in the back, small, dark, near the kitchen where the sound of knives and boiling water can drown out what happens inside. Maeve keeps it stocked with laudanum, washcloths, a chipped basin. You've helped there once. Just once, a girl named Nora had come down with something fast and vicious. Fever so high she spoke in rhymes and cried for her mother, then her sister, then someone named Harold no one could place. You spent one night wiping her forehead, holding her hand while Maeve poured something bitter between her lips. She died at dawn. No funeral, no burial, just a cart out back covered with a blanket and her name erased from the door by the time you went back upstairs. But sickness isn't the only fear. There's another you don't speak aloud. Syphilis, the great rot some call it. It slips in quiet, spreads slow, and stays hidden until it chews your face apart. You've seen it. One man used to be a regular, came back from the mining camps with a bandana over half his face. When he took it off, you nearly dropped your tray. His nose was gone, mouth crumpled in like old leather. No one would serve him. He left and never returned. The girls who work upstairs have a different routine. They wash obsessively. Vinegar, carbolic soap, sometimes whiskey. One of them, Lillian, swears by a concoction of onions and garlic that she rubs inside her thighs. It burns, she says. But better that than your insides rotting. She's not wrong. There's also the whisper of the clap. Gonorrhea. The word itself sounds like mockery, but the symptoms aren't funny. Burning, pain, sometimes worse. The doctor hands out mercury pills and mumbles something about abstinence, like it's a real solution. Maeve pays him in trade, free drinks, and sometimes favors. He's not exactly reliable, but he's all you've got. And then there's the nightmare you really don't talk about. Pregnancy. You miss a month, then another. Your stomach turns at the smell of frying eggs. You wake up sweating and can't lace your corset all the way anymore. And if that happens, you've got 3 choices, and none of them end happily. Option 1, you run, find a boarding house, a midwife, maybe a relative you haven't spoken to since you left home. Hope they'll take you in, raise the child, change your name, disappear. Option 2, you stay. Work until you start to show and pray Maeve doesn't notice. But she will. She always does. No one wants to watch a swollen-bellied girl try to flirt over poker chips. She'll cut you loose the moment you stop selling the dream. And then what? Option 3. You see the woman who lives 2 streets over behind the church with the broken bell. She doesn't advertise, but everyone knows. Girls go to her quietly late at night and come back empty and pale. Some don't come back at all. One girl, a new one, barely 16, made that 3rd choice. She bled for 3 days straight. You heard her crying through the walls. Maeve brought the doctor, but he arrived late and left fast. She was gone by the end of the week. Her things were burned in the alley behind the saloon. You sleep with one hand on your belly now, not because you're pregnant. Not yet, but because the fear of it is heavier than the corset you wear every day. You've memorized your cycle like scripture. Every late period is a countdown. One night, you hear Frenchie throwing up in the back room. Loud, messy. She blames it on bad oysters from a miner's lunch plate. But you know the truth. You saw her clutching her side yesterday. You saw Maeve slip her something in a paper packet. You don't ask. You never ask, but you make her tea and sit nearby while she groans into a pillow. That's as much kindness as you can risk. There's a doctor in town, Dincher, who treats the girls when they're desperate. He's seen it all. Rashes, infections, broken ribs, bruises from men who didn't understand the word no. He doesn't judge, but he doesn't care either. He offers cures that sting more than the disease. He once stitched up a girl's hand using a fish hook and some whiskey. You're lucky, he said. Could have been your throat. One historical fact, many saloon girls faced constant exposure to disease, especially sexually transmitted infections like syphilis and gonorrhea with limited access to reliable medical care or preventative treatment. One quirky fact, some women believed carrying a small satch of garlic in their corset warded off illness. Part superstition, part very pungent wishful thinking. One debate. Scholars still wrestle with the question of agency. Whether saloon girls made calculated decisions about health and survival, or if they were caught in a system that gave them no real choices at all. That night, you lie awake longer than usual. The cough is back, scratching behind your ribs. You light a candle, sip water, count your breaths. The ceiling stares down at you unmoved. You wonder how many girls have looked at it and asked the same questions. You don't get answers, only mourning. You're halfway through a laugh when the sheriff walks in, and just like that, the temperature of the saloon drops 10 degrees. It's not because anyone here is particularly fond of the law. It's the opposite. His badge might say peacekeeper, but out here, the law is more like a mood. Changeable, selective, and usually 2 drinks behind. Sheriff Markham stands in the doorway with his boots caked in mud and his hat low over his eyes like some grizzled caricature of virtue. He's tall, wide, and always smells like gun oil. And damp wool. He doesn't speak at first, just scans the room with a slow, deliberate glance that lands on everyone and everything. The card players freeze mid-hand. The piano dies down. Even the laughter from the back corner fizzles into silence. Then his eyes find you. He doesn't say your name. He never does. But there's a nod. Not friendly, not threatening, just acknowledgement. You give him one in return, polite, but distant. Because here's the truth. The sheriff might not be your enemy, but he's definitely not your friend. The best you can hope for is that he ignores you entirely. The worst is that he decides he's in the mood to enforce something tonight. Markham walks to the bar, leans against it like he owns the whole damn town, and orders his usual, coffee, black, in a chipped mug he insists on using every time. Billy the bartender slides it over without a word. No one else orders coffee after dark except men who intend to stay very, very alert. You keep working. Smile at a miner who smells like dirt and wet copper. Pour a drink, but your eyes keep drifting back to Markham. He's watching something or someone. You just don't know what yet. That's the problem with lawmen out here. They don't always wear white hats. Some are just thugs with paperwork. Others mean well, but are stretched so thin they crack like bad glass. And then there are those like Markham who float in that gray zone, righteous when it suits them, blind when it's convenient. He's not the only authority you have to navigate. There are marshals, too, federal, sometimes territorial, who roll through town with long coats and federal warrants, and eyes that see too much. They don't ask questions so much as state facts. You've been questioned by one before. It started polite and then ended with a hand on your wrist and the kind of smile that makes your stomach crawl. Maeve intervened that time. She always has an instinct for when things are about to get legal. Then there are vigilantes, the self-appointed law. Usually ranchers or drunk ex-soldiers who think their gun belt grants them moral clarity. They show up with ropes and righteous fury whenever someone's caught cheating, stealing, or looking a little too foreign. Their justice is fast, messy, and public. You've watched them drag a man out by his heels once. Accused of something no one quite confirmed. He didn't come back. The saloon tries to stay on good terms with everyone. Maeve pays protection money in coin and sometimes in favors. Free drinks for the sheriff, a quiet room upstairs for traveling lawmen, occasional donations to the town's church fund or schoolhouse if the rumors of a crackdown start circling. It's all part of the unspoken arrangement. You let us keep the fantasy alive, and we'll pretend this is still a respectable town. But sometimes the illusion cracks. A few weeks back, a girl named Lydia came downstairs pale as a ghost, clutching her wrist. Said one of the deputies had grabbed her hard and made threats about jail time if she didn't entertain him for free. She tried to laugh it off, but everyone could see the bruise blooming on her arm. Maeve handled it quietly, sent a note, made a few promises. The deputy stopped showing up. No one asked what happened. Some things just resolve themselves. Tonight, Markham finishes his coffee and doesn't cause trouble, but his presence is a reminder. You're not just dancing for minors and gamblers. You're dancing in front of the law, too. And it's always watching, always judging, always deciding how much of you it'll tolerate before it decides you're too loud, too wild, too much. You've seen it happen. The girl gets too outspoken, too clever, starts quoting newspapers or reading too many books. Suddenly, she's a nuisance. Next thing you know, she's arrested for public indecency or some fabricated nonsense. Usually, she's gone by morning. One historical fact: in many frontier towns, sheriffs and marshals held enormous power, often arbitrarily exercised, and were known to use saloons as both social hubs and sources of income or favors. One quirky fact: some saloons kept ledgers listing officer tabs, free drinks or discounted services for lawmen, essentially bribes recorded in cursive and liquor stains. One debate. Scholars differ on whether law enforcement officers in the Wild West maintained justice or simply managed chaos with a badge and a smirk. Later that night, Markham tips his hat and leaves without a word. The door swings shut behind him. The saloon breathes again. The music picks up. You go back to smiling. But for the rest of the night, you keep one eye on the door and the other on the back corner where he sat, just in case. Because in this place, the law doesn't come with a warning. It just walks in, orders coffee, and waits. The saloon has two economies. One, you can see the clink of coins on the counter, the glass bottles lining the bar, the tips slipped into garters with a wink and a grin. That part's easy. It's loud and lit and just shady enough to make the men feel daring. But beneath it, beneath the music and the flirting and the watered-down whiskey, there's another system entirely. One where nothing is what it seems and everything has a price no one talks about. It starts with a bootleg whiskey. You think the bottles come from a supplier in Kansas City, maybe that's what the madam says anyway. But one night, you catch a glimpse of the real deal. You're heading through the kitchen to get ice when you spot two men lifting a barrel out of a tray pour in the floor. It's stamped with a ranch brand and reeks of corn mash. They're pouring it into fancier bottles, labels from Tennessee and New Orleans. The good stuff. Or so the customers think. You don't say a word, you just nod and keep walking. That's rule number one in the secret economy. Don't get curious. The gambling's more obvious, of course. Cards clacks across tables all night. Coins change hands like they're contagious. But what most customers don't realize is that the house always wins, not by luck, but by design. The decks are marked, not every game, but enough. One of the dealers, a wireman named Slim, has a way of flicking his wrist that shifts the odds every time. He gets a cut. The madam gets hers. And if someone loses too much and gets loud about it, Tree steps in. No one questions the results after that. Then there's the back room. It's not on any blueprint. No windows, one door, always guarded. You've only been in once, and even that felt like trespassing. Inside, shelves of fine liquor that never see the front bar. Stacks of cigars in glass jars, crates stamped with shipping marks from Mexico, and somewhere even farther. There's a strong box bolted to the floor and a small table with a velvet cloth, usually covered in ledges and gold scales. You saw Maeve in there once with a man dressed too fine for this town. She looked up, saw you, and smiled without warmth. "Need more ice?" she asked. You nodded and backed out quickly. That's where the real money happens. Smuggling is part of it. You hear whispers about shipments coming in on wagons marked dry goods, bottles of absinthe, Spanish lace, maybe even opium tucked into sacks of flour. The saloon sits at a crossroads, a perfect hub for goods headed west, where laws thin out and prices shoot up. People come here to drink, gamble, and forget. They leave with a lot more than hangovers. And sometimes they leave people behind. Human trafficking isn't the term anyone uses, but you know it when you see it. A new girl shows up out of nowhere, doesn't speak English, follows Maeve around like a stray cat. She works the floor, keeps her head down, barely talks. Then one night she's gone. No goodbye, no trace. You ask Ruby about her and she just shrugs. Not our business, she says. She was borrowed. Probably got returned. It makes your stomach turn. Not everything sinister, though. Some of it's just smart. Like the system the girls use to cover each other. Say you're short on rent 1 week. You pawn a necklace and Maeve doesn't blink. Say a man gets too handsy. Ruby follows him out and smashes his kneecap with a poker. Frenchie sells cigars to passing travelers, one she's lifted from the back room, and splits the profit with the piano man for keeping quiet. It's survival, not betrayal. Everyone has a hustle. You start your own. There's a farmer's boy who delivers eggs every Thursday. Young, soft-spoken, always red in the face. You charm him into bringing extra, then resell them to the boarding house down the street for twice the price. Nothing big, just enough to feel like you've got a little leverage, a little power. You stash the money in a loose brick behind the stove where no one but you knows to look. But the deeper you go, the more you realize the saloon's built on 1,000 quiet deals, all stacked like playing cards. You pull one out and the whole thing might fall. So you learn to work around the edges. Say just enough. Smile just right. Keep your hands clean even when you know the floor beneath you is soaked in secrets. One night you overhear a conversation between Maeve and a railroad man. Something about land rights, development plans, who's being paid to keep certain routes closed. It's all numbers and names you don't recognize, but the money involved could buy out the entire town twice over. Maeve laughs softly. They think I run a saloon, she says. Isn't that charming? One historical fact, many Western saloons functioned as unofficial hubs of black market trade, including bootlegging, gambling rings, and contraband trafficking. Sometimes with law enforcement's quiet approval. One quirky fact, some saloons printed their own drink tokens that doubled as a form of local currency, which customers used not only for liquor, but by favor or secure future bets. One debate historians argue whether women like Maeve were criminal masterminds or simply survivalists, using every tool available in a system designed to keep them broke and quiet. At the end of your shift, you pass by the back room again. The door's ajar. Inside, someone's counting stacks of paper money you've never seen before. Green, crisp, Eastern. You pause for just a second too long. A shadow moves. The door swings shut. You keep walking. You don't ask questions. Not in the real economy. You just dance, pour, and smile. While the real deals happen in rooms you pretend not to notice. You think about leaving all the time. Not in a dramatic way. Not with a suitcase packed and a tearful goodbye. More like a daydream you slip into between drinks and dances. A quiet morning where you just don't come back. You walk past the station, buy a ticket, and keep going until the landscape changes. Until no one knows your name or what you used to do for a living. It sounds so easy, but out here, walking away from the saloon is like trying to leave a river mid-current. It doesn't let go easy, and the longer you've been in it, the harder it pulls. The idea usually starts when someone else tries it. A girl named Tess was the first you saw make a real go of it. Sweet, soft-spoken eyes like sugar glass. She didn't drink, didn't curse, and somehow kept her pet tick coats cleaner than everyone else's. She got herself wrapped up in a cattleman named Boyd. He wasn't rich, but he had land, real land, and he promised her a cottage near the river, chickens, maybe even a piano someday. She believed him. She packed a small bag, gave away her extra stockings, and left without saying goodbye. For a week, you didn't hear a word. Then she was back. No bag, no shoes, just a bruise high on her cheekbone, and a look in her eyes like something inside had curled up and died. She wouldn't say what happened. Maeve let her back in, handed her a dress, and said nothing, or when asked. You all knew better. Not every escape attempt ends like that, but most don't end well. Sometimes the girl gets as far as the next town before she realizes she doesn't have enough money for food or train fare. Sometimes the man who promised her a new life remembers how much cheaper it is to abandon someone than to support them. And sometimes, well, sometimes girls just vanish. No one knows where they go. Maybe they make it. Maybe they don't. You've had your chance, too. A customer named Lel offered to take you to San Francisco once. Said he had a sister who ran a boarding house and would give you work. Not like this, he said, gesturing vaguely to your corset and heels. Honest work. He brought you a map, a timetable, and half the fare in a wax paper envelope. You stared at it for a long time. Then you tore it up, and you didn't believe him. Or maybe you did, but not enough. You've seen too many girls trust the wrong promises, and honestly, you didn't know who you'd be without the saloon. It's easy to think you'll just become someone new, a teacher, a baker, or someone who walks upright during daylight. But what if you don't know how anymore? Still, the fantasy sticks. You think about it every time someone plays a certain piano tune. Light drifting like a breeze. You imagine that same melody playing as you step onto a train, hair loose, bag in hand. Maybe you've got a hatbox. Maybe you're crying. Maybe not. It doesn't matter. In that moment, you're free. But then you look around at the other girls laughing too loud. At the man puking behind the piano, at Maeve counting bills with a look like iron across her face. And you realize how tangled you are in this place. It's not just the job, it's the routine, the knowledge of how to survive here. You know which boots to wear when it rains. You know which customers tip well and which ones are all talk. You know where to hide your money, who to avoid, how to smile even when your teeth ache. That's worth something. Still, some do get out. There was a girl, June, who worked here before your time. They say she used her tips to buy a boarding house across the county line. Now she runs it herself. No men allowed upstairs. Clean sheets, hot food. They say she hires only girls who want out of the life. You don't know if it's true. Might be a myth may let circulate to give you all something to hope for. But sometimes when you're counting coins late at night, you think about what kind of lock June might have on her front door and what it would feel like to turn that key. One historical fact, many saloon girls attempted to leave the trade by marrying, saving for a business, or relocating to towns where their past was less likely to follow them. But few succeeded without support or protection. One quirky fact, in some frontier towns, girls who left the saloon life would pay for classified ads in distant city newspapers, coded messages to long-lost family or new suitors, hoping to reinvent themselves. One debate. Scholars argue whether the high turnover of saloon girls was due to burnout, personal choice, or external pressures from violence, disease, or a lack of long-term opportunity. One night, Ruby tells you she's thinking of leaving. She says it low, careful over a plate of cold chicken and Dale biscuits in the back kitchen. I've been saving, she says. Got near $40 stashed. I know a man in Denver. You nod and pretend to be happy for her. She deserves it. But inside, you wonder how many more weeks she has before the saloon pulls her back. Later, alone in your room, you open the loose floorboard and count your own savings. You don't touch it, just look. You trace the edges of the worn bills, run your thumb over a small brass key that opens nothing yet, and you whisper to yourself, not a prayer, not quite a promise, someday. The night while Bill Hickok walks into your saloon, the room changes, not just in sound or motion, but in weight. Like the air thickens around him. You hear the door swing open, a gust of desert wind with it, and the silence rolls in right behind. Even the piano man stops mid-chord, fingers hovering above the keys. You don't need to turn around to know who it is. You feel him before you see him. He's got that walk, slow, heavy-heeled, like he's dragging a legend behind him, tall, lean, and long hair brushed back beneath a worn black hat. A frock coat that could have been stolen off a preacher or a corpse. 2 pistols, one on each hip. He doesn't speak as he crosses the floor. He doesn't need to.